Hip-hop has always been about more than just music. From the streets of New York to the global stages today, it has been a cultural movement, a voice for the unheard, and a lifestyle that constantly reinvents itself. But in 2026, something strange is happening. Many of the biggest names in rap, artists whose songs dominate streaming platforms, whose faces are instantly recognizable, are suddenly vanishing from interviews. The cameras roll for award shows, the microphones capture their tracks. Yet when it comes to sitting down for an interview, they are nowhere to be found. So, why is this happening? Why are modern rappers avoiding interviews? The answer isn't simple, but it tells us a lot about the new rules of fame in hip-hop. It's a story about control, image, mental health, and the shifting power dynamics between artists and the media. And it's changing the way fans connect with their favorite artists, for better or worse. For decades, interviews were the lifeblood of a rapper's public image. Think back to the 90s and early 2000s Nas, Tupac, Jay-Z and Eminem. Interviews were how they shaped their public personas, shared their struggles, and built legacies. Fans didn't just listen to the music, they hung on every word in a radio interview or a TV segment. Those conversations were cultural moments. But today, many rappers see interviews as unnecessary, sometimes even risky. One major reason is control over the narrative. In the age of social media, every word a celebrity says can be clipped, tweeted, and dissected within minutes. A single sentence taken out of context can ignite controversy, derail a campaign, or destroy an artist's carefully crafted image. In a world where press coverage can swing public opinion overnight, staying silent, or controlling every public statement, has become a form of protection. Artists like Drake or Travis Scott aren't just musicians, they are brands. Every appearance, every word spoken publicly, is scrutinized by millions of people across the globe. A misstep in an interview could overshadow a new album release, a tour announcement, or a carefully timed collaboration. Why risk it? Instead, many modern rappers now rely on social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, even private Discord channels, to communicate directly with their fans. Here, they set the terms, control the narrative, and avoid the filters of traditional media. Another factor is mental health. Hip-hop has always demanded authenticity, but the price of constant exposure can be brutal. Artists are expected to maintain public personas that are often larger than life while managing real-life stress, trauma, and personal challenges. Interviews, which were once seen as opportunities to connect, can now feel invasive. Questions that seem routine can quickly become probing, judgmental, or sensationalized. For many rappers, declining interviews is a way to protect their mental well-being. Take the example of Kendrick Lamar. Over the past few years, he's chosen silence over spectacle. Kendrick rarely gives interviews, yet his albums continue to dominate charts and cultural conversations. Fans are still captivated, not because he's everywhere in the media, but because the music speaks for itself. His scarcity has made every public appearance, every tweet, every performance feel monumental. It's an old marketing lesson repurposed for the digital age. Scarcity creates value. Scarcity also builds mystique, and mystique sells. Look at the biggest rappers today who avoid the media: Future, Playboi Carti, and Juice WRLD before his tragic passing. Their limited public personas make fans feel like they're glimpsing something rare, something exclusive. Every song drop, every concert, every cryptic social media post becomes an event. The lack of interviews amplifies intrigue, turning ordinary album releases into cultural phenomena. But there's more at play than just control and mystique. Modern rappers are navigating a world where cultural sensitivity and cancel culture are constant threats. A joke, an offhand comment, or a poorly phrased statement can be turned into a social media storm in minutes. For artists whose lives are already lived in the public eye, interviews can feel like a landmine. Some even argue that avoiding interviews altogether is a survival tactic, protecting themselves not just from PR disasters, but from real-world consequences that can come from misinterpreted words. And yet, this avoidance is reshaping fan interactions in fascinating ways. In the past, interviews were the bridge between artist and audience. Today, that bridge is being replaced by curated content, digital performances, and strategic leaks. Fans may not get to hear their favorite rappers' thoughts on a late-night show, but they do get exclusive tracks, Instagram lives, or behind-the-scenes clips that feel more personal because they're controlled by the artist, not a media company. There's also a generational shift in play. Younger artists didn't grow up relying on traditional media. They grew up on YouTube interviews, TikTok clips, and memes. The old rules, Press junkets, radio appearances, magazine spreads aren't instinctual. For them, engagement happens on their terms. They understand that their audience doesn't need a 30-minute TV interview to feel connected. A few strategic posts, a live stream, or a well-timed tweet can be far more effective in building loyalty and hype. Now, let's talk about the art of silence. In hip-hop, silence can be a statement in itself. Not speaking publicly isn't necessarily absence, it's a choice that conveys confidence, focus, and even rebellion. By refusing interviews, rappers are reclaiming the narrative. They're saying that the music, not the chatter, should define them. In an era where anyone can become a viral commentator overnight, maintaining silence is a radical form of authenticity. This approach isn't without risks. Critics argue that avoiding interviews can alienate fans, making artists seem distant or unrelatable. There's also the potential for misinformation to spread unchecked. But the payoff, for many, outweighs the downsides. Avoiding interviews creates a controlled ecosystem in which the artist's brand, music, and message remain uncompromised. Here's an interesting thought: by avoiding interviews, rappers are also redefining the role of the media. Once, journalists had immense power to shape public perception. Today, that power has shifted. Social media has decentralized influence, and artists now have direct channels to speak to millions without anyone in the middle. In essence, avoiding interviews isn't just about personal choice, it's about changing the entire game of fame. And here's something to consider, listeners. The rappers you see constantly in interviews, they're often the ones at the start of their careers, still navigating the industry, or those who thrive on traditional exposure. The superstars who can afford to stay quiet are doing it because they've already earned their audience. They've reached a point where silence itself is a strategy, a weapon in the competitive world of hip-hop. You might be wondering how this affects the music itself. Interestingly, it doesn't. If anything, this new media strategy can enhance artistry. Rappers are freed from the pressure of constant explanation, letting their work speak louder than their words. Kendrick Lamar didn't need interviews to make To Pimp a Butterfly a cultural milestone. Travis Scott didn't need late-night talk shows to turn Astroworld into a phenomenon. Their music exists on its own terms, untethered from the whims of public conversation. And yes, fans are noticing. Some express frustration, they want more access, more insight into their favorite artists' lives. But others appreciate the focus on the art itself. They respect that the artist is setting boundaries, protecting mental health, and reclaiming autonomy. In a culture obsessed with overexposure, this restraint feels revolutionary. It's also worth noting the impact on collaborations and promotions. In the past, interviews were a primary tool for promotional tours or collaborations. Today, artists rely on a mix of social media hype, influencer marketing, and exclusive content drops. A single cryptic post on Instagram can generate more attention than a 2-hour media tour. In other words, avoiding interviews isn't hurting careers, it's reshaping them in ways that are arguably more effective and sustainable. And here's a fun thought experiment for you. Imagine if your favorite rapper suddenly agreed to daily interviews. Every detail of their personal life would be scrutinized, every opinion debated, every mistake amplified. The music might remain the same, but the public perception would shift drastically. In many ways, silence is their superpower. By controlling what is and isn't shared, they dictate the pace and nature of their fame. So, what does this mean for the future of hip-hop? We're witnessing a fundamental shift in how fame operates. Interviews aren't dead, they're just no longer essential. Hip-hop artists are learning that visibility doesn't have to come at the expense of privacy or mental health. They're building brands that are resilient, flexible, and aligned with personal values. The new rules of hip-hop fame prioritize control, mystique, and authenticity over exposure and media chatter. If this fascinates you, imagine what it would be like when a superstar decides to break their silence. Every word, every sentence, every gesture would be a global event, and maybe that's the real genius behind avoiding interviews. It keeps fans hungry, engaged, and anticipating something bigger. Scarcity isn't just a marketing tool in hip-hop, it's a cultural force. So, the next time you see your favorite rapper refusing an interview, don't be frustrated. Recognize it for what it really is: a reflection of control, strategy, and an understanding of the modern fame economy. In a world obsessed with exposure, the true power now lies in knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. And trust me, in hip-hop today, silence speaks louder than words ever could.